Welcome, and we're so excited today to present another Legal and General Just Covered podcast where we talk to advisors and people in the intermediary space about their views and opinions about client outcomes. My name's Wayne.
And I'm Hazel, and today we're really lucky to be joined by Ollie from Cavendish Online. Ollie is a senior sales manager, so welcome, Ollie. Can you tell us a bit about your role and how you came into that?
Absolutely. So I effectively have a head of sales role within Cavendish Online. So I look after all aspects of sales. So we have various different sales channels within Cavendish Online, and that's both through advice services and non-advice services as well. And that's over 3 locations. So we have roughly 70 sales agents now, which has grown significantly over the last kind of 2 to 3 years, and that all kind of sits under me really. So yeah, it's great to have seen so much growth in the last couple of years, and it's great that falls under my remit as well.
So just a small job then.
Small job, yeah. Getting bigger all the time.
And obviously Cavendish Online, it's got the word online in it, but It's not just an online business, is it?
No.
So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the online part, that's how Cavendish Online started effectively. So John and Ian, John is still with Cavendish now. Ian left the business a couple of years ago, but Cavendish Online started as an online tool where customers can search for Cavendish Online, hit our website from various other sites such as Money Saving Expert, for example, and they can run quotes. And the beauty with our online tool is that customers can get quotes for themselves. They can purchase. It's execution only. We charge an upfront fee, but we strip out the commission, which means that the product is a really well priced product for them that they may struggle to find cheaper like for like elsewhere. So that's what drives a lot of the clients into Cavendish. And then we've got our sales teams, which are all telephony based, that kind of feed off the back of that. So over time, we've built a guidance team, advice team. So the guidance team are designed to really outbound clients that have started that journey, who maybe don't have the confidence to complete that journey and have fallen off at some point because they just don't know what they're doing, or they don't have the trust or knowledge to know what they're doing. And then we have an advice team as well that can outbound clients that are medically quite unwell and want that extra support recommendation side of things, so they end up with the right product for them. And that's generally been our model for the last few years, which has worked really, really well. So yeah, that's where the online part originates from. Most of our leads do still come from online in some way, shape or form, but we have different lead sources now alongside that.
Thanks so much for joining as well, Ollie. What a great business you're involved with, and I like the breadth of it is brilliant, and the sum of its parts is obviously really, really powerful. How did you end up where you are now?
So I think most of us probably fall into this industry a little bit. I don't think any of us are at school thinking, I'm going to work in life insurance when I'm older. Certainly didn't think that myself. I was very much into my sport, gym, running, and my passion was to get into that sort of industry really. So left school, did sport and exercise qualifications, became a PT and gym instructor, did that for a couple of years. And as much as I loved the role, and I still love that sort of environment now, it wasn't really a career for me. So decided to completely change, take a bit of a gamble, and moved into a mortgage advice role within Cheltenham and Gloucester. Did that for a couple of years, and just found that sales was quite a well-suited role for me. I did quite well for a couple of years, got my CMAT qualifications, did a bit of advice then in the Halifax branch. And then I've been in brokerages since then and worked my way up the chain and been in management roles now for probably best part of 12 years. So yeah, been in this industry now for quite some time.
Yeah, that's quite a journey as well, isn't it? All the kind of the differences, and I guess you'll probably notice a big difference depending on where you've been, like, in the banking world, in mortgages, and then in the brokerages and all those. In terms of your background, have you always done kind of a mix of advice and non-advice?
Yeah.
And what do you see being the key differences there?
So I think when I started out at Cheltenham and Gloucester, it was non-advice, selling mortgages. I did well within that role, so I then got put through the CMAT role, CMAT qualifications, and then became an advisor. So I managed to get a taste of both the advice and non-advised role straight away, really. And then since being part of various brokerages, it's been mainly non-advised, but then since being part of Cavendish, we've obviously got advice and non-advised. I don't think there's huge amounts of difference between the two elements. I mean, the key areas are still the same. You still put the customer first. You still educate the customer. You still explain all the options. The only difference being really is that obviously with an advised sale, you have that extra responsibility to make those recommendations, make sure that it's absolutely the right recommendations and it's covering all those protection needs a customer wants. Whereas with guidance, it is all about education and it's all about options, and it's making sure that you explain it in such a way that the customer ends up probably, hopefully, with a similar sort of outcome to what they would do if they were being advised a product. And that's where I think we've done really well at over the last few years. We've managed to get that balance just about right, where our clients, sometimes they want advice, sometimes they want to make their own choice, but have that help in hand, being guided through the options, being given, those pieces of information, that education, where they feel like they understand what they're choosing from, rather than just being sold, based on their budget. I can pay £10 a month. What can you sell me for that premium? Because they know nothing about the product when you go down the budget route. So it's all about value. And I think the two are very closely aligned, really. And I think a lot of time we get caught up with advice versus guidance. I think it can be both. I think the customer should be given a choice, whether they want a recommendation or whether they make their own decision, because ultimately they make their own decision anyway for advice. They're just being given, it's just being, I guess, displayed to them in a slightly different way.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because customers coming into it, they're not going to have that knowledge. There's often, the FCA often mention this, don't they? That inherent imbalance between the person offering the product and the customer. So making sure they understand what they're doing is so important, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So you must get people that are thinking, okay, I'll get to a position where I understand what you're saying there, but some of these things are a little bit muddy. So do you get people that then swap for advice and they say, right, okay, maybe I prefer to take your advice service or not?
Not a huge amount, to be honest.
Right,
I think
okay.
You'd think there would be. You'd think customers would start down the guidance route. And because we're offering options and customer gets to a point where I don't know what to go for. Can I have advice, please? It doesn't really happen a great deal because customers don't really know. We know in the industry what the difference is between advice and non-advice is. The average person out on the street won't know what the difference is. To them, advice means I need a hand, I need help, I need someone to guide me, I need to be told what the options are. That's what they mean by advice. So what we tend to do is we take them down the guidance route, and we present all these options, and we present to them like, we put back on them what their situation is. We say to them, okay, so you told me you got 2 children. What's most important for you? How much would you like to leave each child if you were to pass away? And we try and paint those pictures for the client, because when you do that, 9 times out of 10, the customer actually, I'd like to leave this for child A and this amount for child B. And all of a sudden, they're starting to build their own products, but they buy into it a hell of a lot more because they've chosen it themselves. They've not been dictated to in any way, and it's quite powerful. But you have to get that education piece right, because if you don't get that right, they're choosing based on just premium, and the whole thing starts to fall apart. So education is just such a big part for us.
Well, as we know, if they're not aware, not educated properly, they won't keep the product and they won't have the benefit of it.
Exactly right. 100%. And they have to come off of that. Customer in their mind will have a price in their mind, which has, I guess, like a value attached to it in their mind, and they'll also have a value attached to the value. So our job is to make sure that in the customer's mind, when they leave that call, their perceived value in the cover is higher than the value they perceive the price to be. And as long as that's the case, they will buy, and they will keep it in place as well. And you can talk the same sort of thing when it comes to Sky packages, right? People are happy to pay £100 a month for Sky because they see the value on it in the Sky movies or the sports channels outweighs the premium that they're paying. So our job is to do the same. It's to bring the products to life and make it mirror their family situation, really.
I love that way to put it. I mean, we've had so many people on the on this podcast, and what amazes me is that no matter how many kind of protection advisors, non-advice, whoever we get in, you all have a slightly different take on it. And I think the way you've just beautifully displayed that it's customer first, it's about education, and actually it's just value. It's a value trade-off, isn't it? And
absolutely.
And I think that really when we've got some people listening to this because they're looking to improve their protection sales or just try new ways of thinking about it, doesn't that just simplify it right down? Feeling overwhelmed with how do I do this?
And the proof in it, Hazel, isn't it, is the fact that you're walking what you're doing, you're educating clients. The proof in it is the BQA Awards.
Mm.
So you've won a few, haven't you? Tell
Won a
us
few.
about that.
Yeah, we've won a few. So I think we've been nominated probably every year, maybe since they've started, I think. So, we're here pretty much every year, which is fantastic. We win generally, or nominated at least, for lots of different awards, like the Data Precision Award and, Policies and Trust Award and Excellent Customer Outcomes Award. And, I regularly speak with Mike and with Bob about all of our metrics. And, I'm always really proud of those metrics. But those metrics are a byproduct of our processes. They're a byproduct of our culture and all those things. And so we don't try and focus on the end goal. We don't focus on, the KPIs. We focus on the process, because if the process is as good as it can possibly be, then the results will look after themselves. So yeah, the big focus is on the processes, and if they're strong, they lead to the better outputs. But yeah, it's great to be nominated, most years, and again this year.
That's brilliant, and a really prestigious award. I mean, we get loads of nominations in every year, so it is fantastic. And I'm curious with that kind of process focus, because I think it's really hard sometimes in sales. You're always trying to chase that, I don't know, the kind of targets, that next best thing. Yeah. How have you managed to kind of either bring people on the journey with you, or even manage your own mindset of actually, let's just take a minute and focus on the process here? And how have you managed to adapt that and get yourself into that rhythm?
So that's been one of the biggest challenges for me. It's just get that balance right, because you're right. We're pushing towards 70 sales staff, right? So to have them who are tasked with hitting numbers, how can we balance that with making sure they do the right thing? And the key for me is making sure that we've got enough strong processes that kind of support that. So the guys on the phone, whether they're advised or non-advised, are heavily scripted. So we've got scripting for all teams. They might vary slightly depending on the team that they're in, but the scripting they have to follow. And it's not a page of A4. It was, when it was in Word format, 55 pages long. We have moved on since then. It's all digital now, but that script gives us the control. And we listen to a huge amount of calls. We aim to listen to a big chunk of calls, which means if anyone is crossing the line, or if anyone is not following the script, we pick it up very, very quickly. We're also hooked up to an AI tool with Aveni, which monitors calls for us. It transcribes what's being said on the call, and it gets linked to the script that they should be following. And it marks them on how closely they followed the script, and it marks them on the pace of the call. So, that gives us a huge amount of opportunity. We could listen to 100% of calls, or look at 100% of calls if we really wanted to. So for the sales agents, they know coming in day one, they're told that there's no real hiding place. Like, you have to get that balance right. But we also know the script works. Like, the script works. The script is designed to educate. So it enables the customer to understand fully what we're talking about. It then we talk about critical illness properly. We talk about IP properly. So, those attachments will generally follow suit really well. And we have really strong metrics on that front as well. So as much as some might argue the script is very long-winded and it might restrict them a little bit, if it does, it massively makes up for it, because they're doing a proper job with these customers and they come off that call with a really high intent. So it definitely balances out. And I think most of the staff, because we train in such a way that everything is geared around the scripts, for 3 weeks we are role playing. It's not just a couple of role plays and the sign off, it's like full on. I think they go onto the phone really believing and trusting in that process. And I think once they do that, they'll get that balance right. And we have enough colleagues that can get that balance right, that any new staff coming in will just kind of mold to that as well, which is great. So
I think that takes the uncertainty and as we've mentioned, that potential overwhelm away, doesn't it? Of, well, where do I start with this conversation? How do I make sure the customer's educated? You've removed all of that doubt, uncertainty and barrier to really just let your team, I guess, as much as you've got a script. I mean, I used to be scripted one of my mortgage advice, non-advised roles right at the start of my early career. And it is quite amazing how quickly you know the script off by heart. Yeah. So you can then just focus on your tone of voice, that customer. Absolutely. And actually, that's almost like learning to drive. The script's the autopilot part. And then it does allow you just to really put your all into that rapport, that customer, and getting the right thing for them, doesn't 100%.
It? Our most successful sales colleagues are those that have that beautiful balance between following the script, knowing it, to the point where if you were to listen to a call, you wouldn't even know they're following a process. They're it's their own, they're saying it in their own way. You know, they're having a laugh and a joke with the client. They're making a bigger point of certain points that, you know, than what maybe the script does, and they really make it their own. And it's really great to hear. And certainly when you show new starters that, and they're listening to it, are they actually following the script? Yeah, they actually are following the script, but you wouldn't be able to tell half the
But you've
time,
also got
which
your
is great.
tool that's recording elements where they might not be getting to the standard you want to, I presume, and then
Yes.
you can sort of
Yeah.
interrogate that,
Yes.
and then that can then be fed back in as a
Yeah.
continuous loop, improvement loop.
Yeah, and because we've got that quite rigorous process in place, if someone's struggling with a particular metric, we know exactly where in that call that is falling down. It's not going to be at different places on every call because everyone has exactly the same process. So if someone's attachment on something is relatively low, we don't have to listen to the whole call. We know that we can go in, usually within 15, 20 minutes of the call starting, it's going to be in and around that. So from the team leader's perspective, they're not hunting around listening for certain bits of the call and having to listen to the whole call, then go straight to it because we know where in the call that
And that's really intriguing because with the advent of AI and stuff like that, have you got sort of aims for development on the back of that? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, AI is run through Cavendish, so it's a third party, so it's not our tool, and that will gradually improve over time, absolutely. And that gives us the breadth to listen to a large amount of calls. But what it won't do, it will transcribe the call, but it won't necessarily listen and pick up on emotions. And maybe certain things that a team leader will pick up on. And what it necessarily won't do is pick up on things that aren't in the script that you more so need to teach colleagues, you know, because you can't script everything. You know, if customers may say things where it's like, oh, I've not had that before. Therefore, it cannot be in this, you can't script for those instances. So you have to train colleagues to deal with those scenarios. And that's where the team leaders come into it and offer a different perspective above and beyond what Aveni does.
It's the way you use the system though, isn't it? That's what you're doing. You're complementing it
Absolutely.
in that use in order to get that improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. And where we're now part of the much wider bank, you know, Lloyds Banking Group, you know, we're part of that. You know, we have to be able to listen to a significant amount of calls because it is a sales role. Sales roles aren't something that are typically are given within the banking world. So we're quite an anomaly there. But we've proven that we can operate that incentive plan whilst having really strong controls and measures in place around, you know, fantastic customer outcomes, you know, low complaints and stuff like that as well. So the balance is we've still managed to keep that balance even through, you know, huge growth.
I think that's a great example for where AI is saved you time. So then you're able to use the time to look at, as you said, those more softer skill elements, those more complex pieces. Because, I mean, when I think back to when I used to call listen, it would be a good 2 hours out my day by the time I'd sat, listened to a call, analysed it, repeated back the bit I need to then work on with the colleague. Whereas actually, if AI could have just directed me that everything on the call was fine, but here's a bit I don't recognise, that's the bit to listen to, you can get through so much more. And
absolutely.
It's
It's an efficiency tool. And, you know, that tool also helps with our advice team because there's two parts to that system. The first is call monitoring. The other part is report writing. So within our advice team, a big part of what they do is writing reports and recommendations. So again, in a similar way, this system will take the call and it will write the report for the advisor and recommendations. So it will listen out for protection gaps and it will pop that into a final report, which probably saves an advisor best part of 45 minutes each time. They still need to check over it. You know, the transcribe it doesn't always pick up, you know, certain things, so they have to check over it, but they don't have to sit there and write it, you know, in the main. So that's from
a software perspective, that must be amazing.
It is it's an amazing tool, and I think it's going to make us such an efficient team because I want my advisors on the phone chatting to customers. I don't want them sat, you know, with eyeballs deep in, you know, in admin work and stuff like that. So, you know, to get them on the phone more with less admin makes a big difference.
Because all three of us have advised. You think about it, you say you've had, I don't know, 4 or 5 appointments, however many you've had in a day, and you're trying to remember the soft facts of appointment one, or the second one.
Yeah.
Doing that, it's going to prompt your memory straight away.
Yeah,
anyway,
less errors as well, sorry, because sometimes they don't get to it. So it's 2 or 3 days later they get to it. And that's when errors can start to happen because they might have, you know, misunderstood something or forgotten something. Whereas with this, they get the call the next day and it
I
writes
can
a
remember
report for them.
those days of like speaking to a customer, scribbling all my notes and thinking, right, I'll go and do my write-ups. I used to try and block out my time, do like, right, that'll be my write-ups time, that's my customer time. And by the time I came to do my notes, I can't even read my own writing. I've got to try and think about what this customer said.
Yeah.
And then I got good at touch typing, but even then, trying to touch type and repeat it, and it's just a nightmare. So that must be a godsend. I wish I'd been part of that team, been able to use it.
It's going to get so much better, isn't it? Over the next 5-10 years, it's going to be incredible what it will do in that time frame.
With all the sort of publicity around it and stuff, and they have said that the real importance of it, won't it, and the real will help in a multitude of industries, really, will be how you use it and how that speeds up, how that improves efficiency, all that type of thing. So look, it's great to hear how you're using it now, but it's just so exciting as to where it could go.
Absolutely.
Isn't it, really?
Yeah, and I think Cavendish has been on the forefront of that for the last 20 odd years. We're the first company to give up 100% commission, which is what we mentioned earlier. And we were the first company to introduce advisor AI as well. And that forms part of what we do as well, which is, customers that we can't get hold of will get sent like a fact finder, which they get a text message and email. They hit the link, they can complete their own fact finder, which is a really kind of in-depth, fluid customer journey, which they can do whenever they want, 24 hours a day through their phone, mobile device.
What's your engagement on that then?
It's fairly good, because customers that have high intent, if we've tried calling a customer and we can't get hold of them, that doesn't necessarily mean the intent has disappeared. It might just mean that they're busy. So you send out that message, they can do it in their own time, and it probably takes up to 20 minutes for them to complete. But it asks them lots of questions about, their mortgage debt and their family, how many kids they got, what's their biggest concerns. And what it does is it builds that on that intent even further. So what happens at the end of it is the customer then, final question, I think it's one of the final questions, when would you like a call? So the customer chooses day, time. That then comes through on an email to the consultant that was assigned to, and they then book it in their diary to call that customer. So not only was that customer probably a high intent customer to start with, they've now completed a full journey. We've got all that information before we've even called the client, and they've chosen their time and day for them to be called. So again, that's a big part of that. That's a growing part of Cavendish as well.
Great way to sift those clients that didn't come in, because if you just left them and just tried to call them all, you wouldn't know which ones had high intent and which didn't.
Exactly.
If you do that, the ones with the high intent are going to come to you, aren't they?
Absolutely. And from a business perspective, we don't want to be paying people just to outbound call all day long. It's not good for us. It's not good for the colleague. It's not great for the customer either. So if we can utilize text messages, emails to entice those customers with the highest intent to engage with us at their free will, and we can then interact with them off the back of that, that's huge for us. So that's a big focus. That's been a big focus for us.
There's so many things that I guess controversially in our industry, if we mention the words like scripting, AI, non-advice, there'd be so many people out there that being honest would be like, oh no, I'm not doing any of that. It's got it would be such a Marmite reaction, wouldn't it? And I think what I'm loving about this conversation is you're proving how these things aren't black and white. It's not a case of getting a script and that has to, that is the be all and end all, you turn into a robot. It's not a case of using MI and therefore sales managers are out of a job. It's not a case of as we've said, going following very stringent processes and that being the creativity is taken out of it. What I'm loving to see is you're using these processes and using these tools to still give your team loads of empowerment, but also thinking about that client and that future. Because I saw I think it's all over like TikTok and Twitter and things. There's always these memes that are like, oh, I don't answer my phone anymore. And there's loads of data, isn't there, that phones aren't actually phones. They're literally an internet device that we don't really take calls. The new generation coming through doesn't actually use it to take a call. So you're already thinking about, well, this generation that you've got coming in through, they're probably more likely to react to a text, and then once you've got their buy-in, they'll receive a call.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And most customers that interact with that process interact via SMS opposed to email for those exact reasons, and it's much more digestible with text message as well and stuff. So technology is definitely something that we've really strived for, and it gives us those foundations. That's what it's for. It's for those strong foundations that the staff then, or the sales agents can then really work off and be really successful as well, which is what, we all want.
Love that. So what was it, Ollie, for yourself? Obviously, you did a bit of mortgage, you did non-advised, unadvised, you moved into protection. What is it that's kept you in the protection space, and why is that such a passion of yours?
I think probably for most of us, a lot of us get hooked by it. You know, when you're on the outside looking in, when I tell people I work in life insurance, it's almost, you feel like an eye roll. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't feel like they are massively inspired when by what I say when I say I work within life insurance. But I think once you're in it and you hear the stories about, you know, claims, successful claims that happen, it's like, it's those stories that make it then all worthwhile. And, you know, Cavendish Online have been acquired by the banking group to grow the protection market. And when I joined Cavendish, I joined at a point where there was probably 20 staff. We're now going to be pushing 130. Like, the growth has been massive over that period of time, and that's exciting. And, you know, I want to see where the journey goes, really. That's what I get excited by. I get excited by offering fantastic products to customers that may not have bought had it not been for us. Going through a journey that is, or, you know, a type of journey that, you know, is really strong in terms of the educational stuff, and the customers coming off at the other end of the phone thinking, actually, I know a hell of a lot more now than I did at the start of it. And they're the best reviews I read from us on Trustpilot. It's the ones that said, I feel like I know so much more now than I did at the start, rather than just, I bought a product, it's £10 a month, I'm happy with the price. And it's all those things, I think, that's kept me in it. And my job now is not the same as what it was 4 or 5 years ago. I've been with Cavendish nearly 8 years. And at that point, it was mainly a sales manager role and managing staff on the phone. Now I've got 9, 10 team leaders, you know, over 3 sites, and we've had to open a 3rd office in Bristol last year. And, you know, those challenges have really been, they've been hard work, don't get me wrong, and it's been full on, but it's also been massively exciting, and the growth is what probably keeps me in it.
And that amazing purpose that you're serving with regards to that, because people don't know what they don't know, do they, with regards to it? It's that human nature element where you've got to experience something to actually know about it or really understand. But obviously with life insurance, critical illness cover, all of that, you can't, because it's not tangible.
Yeah.
And I think we talk about the protection gap. Someone in one of our other podcasts called it the engagement gap. And I think I thought that was so good in that you're helping customers to engage on it. They haven't experienced it, so they can't necessarily engage, but you're educating them along the way. We've had to share stories, obviously, you've probably got countless ones of them, and that's really feeding through in the great service you provide and that culture you've got in order to get that great client satisfaction.
Yeah, well, the customer won't engage unless they understand. If they don't understand, they won't engage, and they won't believe in the product. So you have to do that whole education piece, so it builds their belief and their understanding, and that's what makes them take actions, which is, I don't know, completing a medical application or giving us bank details and stuff like that. So yeah, that education piece is massive across all our teams. Said it again.
To be honest, I feel excited to see what you're going to get up to next in Cavendish Online. I feel like there will still be, you know, more to come, especially as technology enhances. I look forward to seeing how you continue to work through that. Ollie, you've given us so much amazing insight there, and I think definitely there'll be so many people that can listen to this episode and think, oh, do you know what, there's something I can learn from that and adapt in my own business. If you were to give other intermediaries out there just one piece of advice or a top tip, what would you say that is?
I'd say focus on, well, there's 2 actually. The first is focus on value, not price. 100%. Like, you know, value is such an important piece, and I think so many, and I've been at brokers before, so I guess I speak from experience here as well. It can be such an easy, I guess, way into the call by just asking a customer, what's your budget? Because a customer is not going to say £100. They're not going to say £50. They might not even say £30. They're going to say £10 or £15. But what does that actually mean? It's just a price. It doesn't mean anything. And, you know, that colleague may end up selling 100 grand's worth of life insurance or some critical illness. But how does that link into the customer's actual situation? Like, what's the link there? Is it enough to cover their mortgage? Does it give them extra for their family? You know, the value is such an important part. And, you know, if I walk around the sales floor, any of the sales floors, and I hear any of our sales colleagues asking a customer what their budget is at the start of the call, it's literally, I'm straight over there, because what does that actually mean? It doesn't actually mean anything. The price will be the price, and what we should be doing is talking about the value, the options. You know, what does this mean for the customer? What does that mean for the customer? Of course, it's got to be affordable, but you deliver the prices, and then you find out at that point if the premium is affordable. But if you've sold the value properly in the first place, it's funny, the customer can generally afford that little bit more because they're bought into it and they understand why it's important.
Absolutely.
So you've got to do that bit before.
I've had many a debate with people on this, because again, some would say that has to be one of your first questions, is what's the budget, especially in the mortgage world. That what's your budget for mortgage and protection?
Yeah.
But I was always on the same side of the fence as you, and that go back to that engagement piece. How do people know what their budget is if they don't even know what the protection is that they need in the first place? And it goes back to that value. And I think for me, I always found a better question is, well, what's the ideal scenario for you if something changes? And it's not even to say if you die, it's just if something changes, like what's the ideal scenario?
Yeah. And you'll ask them that after that, and after you've put them in the informed position through the education, you'll then ask that question. Yeah. And then you'll be into that conversation.
Absolutely. And if it's unaffordable, we're not gonna sell them a product that's unaffordable. So, but at least let's get to the quote stage and give them all the information before we ask that question. I'm pretty sure if you were to ask a customer what their budget is within 5 minutes, which I think does happen, and you ask, and then you ask that same customer their budget at the end of the education piece, I'm pretty sure that their budget would have suddenly gone up by some amount, whether it's a 10 or 50, whatever the amount is, it would have gone up by some amount because they know a lot more about what the product is and what it can do for them. And that's common sense, right? So yeah, we don't ask what budget is. So that's the big one. And the second thing is probably just culture. It's just putting the customer first at every opportunity, not just saying it, it's actually doing it. And I think every company will probably say that they put the customer first, but actually does that happen? And I think that comes from the very top, the culture, and it feeds all its way down into the systems that we use in terms of how we interview, how we train, how the managers manage. It's absolutely everything. And if any of those things fall down, then you risk people for coming into the business, perhaps from maybe other brokers, and maybe, kind of going back to form a little bit and not following our processes in the way that we want them to work. So all of that stuff has to be right for it to come off.
Well, even from what you've demonstrated, even giving the customer that choice of channel and interaction, that in itself, it seems so simple, but that is really putting them first. It's like, well, what time do you want to engage with us? We'll text you, we can SMS, whatever works better. I think that you're walking the walk, not just saying it. So
it's that flexibility of choice for customers, isn't it?
Absolutely.
How they want to interact nowadays, that's what you're doing. And it's obviously going to move forward as time goes by.
Yeah,
amazing
absolutely.
Stuff.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, Ollie. You've been absolutely, I've learned so much on that call. And as I said, brilliant. I'm excited to see what Cavendish Online do going forward. I think it will be definitely a business to watch. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Ollie.
much.
Thanks.